From the point of view of British interests, the Balfour Declaration was a colossal strategic blunder, one of the worst blunders in British imperial history, because it generated no end of ill will on the part of all the Arabs and the Muslim world, hostility that continues to the present day, and it failed to acquire the real gratitude of the Zionists, because the Zionists kept saying to the British during the mandate, but you promised us the state. But the British reply was, no, we didn't promise you a state, we promised you a national home, which is not the same thing. So in the end, Britain fell between the two stools. As the mandatory power, Britain favoured the Zionists. The first High Commissioner for Palestine was Sir Herbert Samuel, a Jew and an ardent Zionist who, as you heard from Dr. Abdallah earlier, in 1915 submitted to the Asquith cabinet a proposal for creating a Jewish state in Palestine. The Palestinians demanded a democratically elected National Assembly and a national government. Whitehall turned down all the requests. The overall effect of the mandate was to weaken the Arabs and to strengthen the Zionists. There was also an element of racism in the British attitude towards Arabs, towards the Arabs. When giving testimony before the Peel Commission in 1937, Winston Churchill referred to the Palestinians as dogs in the manger who stood in the way of the Zionists. And he said, he castigated the Palestinians for not making way to a stronger race, quote, a stronger race, a higher grade race, a more worldly wise race, which has come in to take their place, unquote. This is a shocking statement, but it's not surprising because racism and imperialism usually go hand in hand. In 1936, an Arab revolt broke out in Palestine against the British and the Zionist proteges. The British army crushed the revolt with the utmost brutality. And Rashid Khalidi, the Palestinian historian, has argued convincingly that Palestine wasn't lost in the 1940s, late 1940s. It was lost in the late 1930s as a result of the British crushing of the Arab revolt. I now come to 1948. There is, as you may have heard, a debate about what happened in 1948. There is a school of old historians who tell the traditional Zionist version of the conflict, and I belong to a group of so-called new historians, which includes Ilan Pape and used to include Benny Morris before he veered to the extreme right. One of the issues in dispute is about Britain's role as the mandate over Palestine was approaching its inglorious end. The Zionist view is that Britain's aim was to abort the birth of a Jewish state, and that Britain armed, encouraged and incited its Arab allies to invade Palestine and strangle the infant Jewish state at birth. Ilan Pape and I argue that Britain was resigned to the emergence of a Jewish state. Its real aim was to abort the birth of a Palestinian state. Hostility towards a Palestinian state was a constant factor in British policy during this period. A Palestinian state in British eyes was synonymous with a Mufti state, and therefore they did not want it. The key to British policy during this period was Greater Transjordan, to support King Abdullah's bid to grab the Arab part of Palestine, the West Bank, the heartland of what was to be the Palestinian state, and later to annex it to his kingdom. And one British official referred to Abdullah as a born land grabber. The 1948 war became a general land grab. The winners were Israel and Abdullah, the losers were the Palestinians. 730,000 Palestinians became refugees, and the name Palestine was wiped off the map. And I want to skip 70 years and get to Theresa May. She's an unqualified supporter of Israel, and she's perhaps the most pro-Israeli leader in Europe. May gave an address to the Conservative Friends of Israel soon after she became Prime Minister. Over 80% of all Tory backbenchers are members of the Conservative Friends of Israel, and the entire cabinet, most prominently Michael Gove. She described Israel as a remarkable country, a thriving democracy, a beacon of tolerance, an engine of enterprise, and an example to the rest of the world. She spoke of Israel as a country where people of all religions and sexualities are free and equal in the eyes of the law. My title for her speech would have been Theresa in Wonderland. May reminded her audience that Britain was entering a special time, the centenary of the Balfour Declaration, and she went on to deliver her wholly one-sided verdict on this infamous document. Quote, it is one of the most important letters in history, she said. It demonstrates Britain's vital role in creating a homeland for the Jewish people, and it is an anniversary we will be marking with pride, unquote. There was a petition signed by 13,000 people, myself included, calling on the British government to apologize for the Balfour Declaration, and there was a reply from the Foreign Office to say, we have nothing to apologize for, we are proud of the part we played in creating the State of Israel. Boris Johnson has a different take to the Prime Minister. 2 years ago, he wrote that the Balfour Declaration was bizarre, a tragically incoherent document, and an exquisite piece of Foreign Office fudgerama. This is the only statement by our Foreign Secretary that I think displays sound judgment and historical insight. My conclusion is that Britain's record in Palestine in the last 100 years was shameful and indefensible. In Palestine, Britain enabled a small minority to start the systematic takeover of the entire country. It's a sad story of double standards, broken promises, betrayals from Balfour to May. So if I were to give a piece of advice to the British government, it would be this: that the Foreign Secretary should give a major speech with a review of Britain's involvement in this conflict, which would start with an apology for the Balfour Declaration and end with a pledge to support Palestinian independence and statehood. This is not likely to happen, but I seriously think that the right thing for the British government to do today would be to recognize Palestine as a sovereign state and as a member of the United Nations. This would be a genuine contribution to a two-state solution to the conflict. This would not be a move against Israel, but on the contrary, in support of Israel. It would be a move to save Israel from itself. A Palestinian state in the occupied territories would enable Israel to preserve its character as both Jewish and democratic. I would further argue that an independent Palestinian state is an existential necessity for Israel. The alternative for Israel is to be an apartheid state. And this is not just a danger that Israel may become, this is a reality. Israel and the occupied territories is indisputably an apartheid state, apartheid regime. In Israel proper, there is democracy, flawed democracy to be sure, but all democracies are flawed in one way or another, but it's a proper democracy. Procedurally, it's a democracy with elections, political parties, parliament. But Israel and the occupied territories is not, most emphatically, not a democracy. It's an ethnocracy, a regime in which one ethnic group dominates the others and disenfranchises them. Recognition of Palestine would permit Britain to face up to its historic responsibility. The Balfour Declaration consisted of two promises, one to the Jews and one to the Palestinians. Britain has overfulfilled its promise to the Jews. It promised them a national home, but it helped them build a Jewish state. It's high time that Britain started to live up to its other promise by upholding the rights of the Palestinians, by working for justice for the Palestinians. Thank you.